guys, welcome back to week 9 of the Bomber budget build. This week we're going to work on the axles again. So far with the axles we've done a couple of upgrades. We've done solid steering links up front, we've put the new servo on it, and we've installed the Incision brand VDI inner axle shafts and locker. When I was installing that steering servo, when I was testing the limits, you could see once it went past the limits and the servo started to bind, you could see how much flex the entire servo mounting system had. Now, of course, you always have to set proper steering servo endpoints. When you don't have a very good radio, that can be an issue. But once you do have a nice servo, hopefully you have a nice radio, and at that point, you definitely need to look at setting proper endpoints. But still, that doesn't mean that your servo isn't going to flex during its normal movements, especially when those front tires are in a bind. So this week, what we're going to do is install 3 parts from Vanquish on that front axle and 1 on the rear axle. So this is all stock parts off of a Bomber. Now, the steering servo mount that comes on the Bomber now is a one-piece plastic U-shape. Before, what Axial had was an aluminum plate with servo posts that bolted to it. That aluminum plate, probably a little bit more rigid. The new all-plastic one has a little bit of flex in those ears. Beyond that, the truss that lays below that servo mount is the exact same as the Axial Wraith. So what we're going to do this week is we're going to replace that truss with the Vanquish aluminum HD truss, and we're going to replace that steering servo mount with our one-piece servo mount as well. And then one additional thing we're going to do is we're going to use our aluminum servo clamp. Those aluminum servo clamps go in front of your servo, so you bolt through those, through the servo, and then into the steering servo mount. Gives you just a nice solid support piece to make sure that you don't break off the ears of your steering servo. Probably some of you have done that either over tightening screws or just running extra hard. Now, as I mentioned, we are going to do one upgrade to the rear axle as well, and that's because the HD trusses from Vanquish come as a pair, one for the front, one for the rear. Since they're a mirror image of each other, you don't want people ordering the wrong one or one and not the other, things like that. So you get both of those when you order, and that's why we're going to do an upgrade to the rear axle as well. So let's jump into the installation, show you how everything fits together on this truck.
The first thing we're going to do is remove the wheels on the side needed to access the upper link screw holding the upper 4 links in place. Once this is accomplished, we can begin by removing the 4 screws holding the servo to the axle, as well as the screw holding the drag link to the servo horn. Move the servo out of the way for now. At this point, we need to remove that upper screw holding the 4 link in place. This will allow us to rotate that axle down. With the axle free to move around, we can remove the 3 screws holding the truss in place. 1 screw runs front to back through the lower portion of the truss, and then 1 of the flathead screws on each side. At this point, we can remove the entire truss and servo mount in one piece and set it aside. You can see the flexibility of that one-piece servo mount that is now stock on the Bomber. This is the new Vanquish HD aluminum servo truss. You can see it's machined quite a bit to lighten it up, still retaining plenty of strength. The new one-piece servo mount fits nicely onto that servo truss. The countersinks on the bottom of the truss meet right up with the design of that HD truss as well. You can see here, this design will be much more rigid than the factory plastic one. Use a little bit of Loctite and use the supplied flathead screws to attach the servo mount to the new HD truss. Reinstallation of the truss is very simple. Just reverse the process that we used before, reattaching the truss with the 3 screws, 1 on each side, and then a new one through the center. This will require the use of a lock nut on the back side now to get everything secured into place. Once that's done, we can reattach the upper 4 link with the stock screw all the way through, and then a nut on the back side again. Rotate your servo back into position, and now we're going to use those servo clamps. These are just a simple aluminum piece that goes in front of the servo to give you that nice firm clamping system. Put 1 screw on each side first, lightly tightening everything into place before adding the other screws to fully tighten down your servo.
pieces installed, our steering servo itself is mounted about as rigid as it can get until it gets mounted to an aluminum axle housing itself. Beyond that, as far as our steering system goes, we still do get to upgrade our knuckles and C-hubs in the future weeks. We'll see exactly when that comes about though. Now, in the coming weeks, I am going to replace that servo again because I do plan to race this truck. And again, I don't think that this servo is the right solution for a truck that you plan to race or bash extremely hard. I'm probably going to install one of my Futaba servos. I run a lot of the Futaba S9157s or the BLS 172s. I used to run a lot of the 152s or 157s, but those are no longer made. So now I run the 172 in a lot of my trucks where I'm really going for one of the best servos that I can get. If you're looking for another option that's not Futaba, the high-tech servos have always done well by me as well. I just choose to run the Futabas. But if you wanted to run something else, the high-tech 7950 is a great servo. The 7954's a little less powerful, still a good servo though. Beyond that, I don't really like the Savox servos. They're not very efficient. I have not had very good luck with them in the past. They're also a little physically larger than a lot of the other servos, especially in height. But with that said, I will be changing that servo out, so you will see a color change happen up there in the front end at some point in this video series. But probably not going to cover that specifically as we covered. Servos, definitely a tough part of a budget build like I'm doing without having dead weeks to really save up that budget. And I don't really like to do the dead weeks as much as possible. So you will see that. I'm sure I'll note it, let you guys know what's going on, and give you a link to what I am running personally. Also, another note. Next week, I am leaving town. I'm going to try and get videos up before I leave, but I will be gone for 2 weeks to go get married. So going back to Missouri, going to get married, and then Nicole and I are going to go spend a week in Costa Rica. So there will be an absence from me, but I will try and get videos done. No promise yet, as I haven't shot them, and it's getting really close to the day where I've got to head back to Missouri and help wrap up some of those last minute details. So what that means is you may see a couple more upgrades happen quickly to this truck before I drive it again, or the next time you see me, I may look a little more tan. Also, for those of you that are watching this close to when it comes out because you're subscribed, which I hope you are, Saturday, May 21st, I'll be in Reno at CKRC Hobby's grand opening of their new outdoor tracks. So if you guys get a chance to make it out to that, I hope to see you there. But with all that, guys, thanks for watching, and we'll see you on the next one.